While Oklahoma State is certainly a trendy pick to cause chaos in the bipolar Big 12, not many people are bold enough to put them in their top four. Our fearless leader, Locked On, is, though.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for swinging on through to make this your first listen. Today, we're partially brought to you by FanDuel. Join in on the action at FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's going to be dropping a Major League Baseball bomb today. Make sure that you get with FanDuel. Meanwhile, we get to slide right into this ranking conversation. And, of course, there's a lot of expert punditry and prognostications out there that do have Oklahoma State hovering in that 7-5-ish range, which I think is extremely commendable and respectable, even though a lot of people still aren't putting Oklahoma State in the top four category. Well, thankfully, we're locked in over here at Locked On because Locked On Big 12's put out their predictions for the Big 12. For the audio folks out here, he has Texas Tech number 1, BYU number 2. I would swap those two, but it is what it is. Number 3, WVU, followed by our Cowboys at Oklahoma State. Houston at 5, Utah 6, K-State 7, TCU 8, Baylor 9, Arizona 10, Arizona State 11, Iowa State 12, 13 KU, 14 UCF, 15 Colorado, 16 Cincy. His justification for putting Oklahoma State up there actually does make a ton of sense. We cover this on a daily basis, right? This is what we do. So we're constantly talking about the rotation on the defensive side of the ball, but this is somebody who very well understands that the offensive side of the ball is going to be a fireworks display. We're going to be able to put up some crazy stat lines and be on ESPN's SportsCenter Top 10 style of conversations on a regular basis. But the rotation on the defensive side of the ball is why Drake is excited about Oklahoma State. Right, there's a lot of unknowns about this Cowboy defense because when you go back and look at some Skylar Cassidy's previous defenses, the yardage components were fairly concerning. Turnovers, the ratios, those are all amazing, but giving up a ton of yards in this conference could obviously be extremely problematic because this is the one conference where 15 can beat 2, 16 can beat 1. So you've got to bring your A game. You've got to be prepared for a lot of, one-score ball games. This conversation about the front seven at Oklahoma State should be pivotal to being a top 4 team by the end of the season. I firmly do believe that we have enough talent to be a top 5 team at the end of the season. I even think top 4 may be a little bold, which is why I'm extremely excited. What he's discussing is the possibilities of the defensive line. You've got a couple returning guys. We've got a handful of returning guys. I think Luke Webb is going to be a name that we're going to talk about a little bit more. Landon Dean is also an individual that's been biding his time, waiting on opportunities. Of course, we've got Jaleel Johnson back. We've got Deshaun Brown back. We got Amon Oates back to man down low, which absolutely should be massive. But he's also got a complement of guys like Jerry Lawson coming over from Louisville or Dominic Macon coming over from Washington. Sadiq Clements that come over from North Texas. That defensive lineman that was going to be the best defensive lineman at North Texas prior to injury, Filet, whatever the case may be. Those individuals will have something to say about the success of this upcoming season. Then you got to factor James Williams coming over from Florida State, Anai White coming over from Penn State. These are guys that got big-time action, at least in big-time moments throughout their college career. Now they're bringing this to Oklahoma State to go alongside with this linebacker core, right? We've been so excited already about the conversations with the linebackers. But I agree with Drake. It kind of starts up front. And to have that level of rotation should put Oklahoma State in a position where we can control one side of the offense, whether it's the pass game or the run game. I think we're going to be good enough and deep enough to shut down a lot of teams' run game, right? The biggest component is the depth. Everybody in the country wants depth. But if you go look at some of the top teams that are always in the top 10, they have packages where they're able to roll guys in and out, right? Whenever you're playing an up-tempo team, like Oklahoma State is likely to be, at least for decent chunks of the season, it usually puts your defense at a disadvantage. But I think this rotation of madness actually might be slightly genius. We just talked about a number of guys that are going to be part of that rotational component. But the linebackers, again, they're going to have to factor into this. And whenever you have Ethan Lasowski coming over with that amount of stats, right? Malcolm Rodriguez-esque is what we like to say here. It should be able to show on the football field this upcoming season. Not to mention the fact that Eric Morris has already pretty much came out and said, I offered 20 dudes, right? So he identified about 20 guys that were good enough to come and play Big 12 ball right away. 18 of those 20 have come to Oklahoma State. So there's got to be a lot of confidence in somebody like an Ethan Osowski, not only physically, but the tangible side of the game, the schematic side of the game, what Skylar Cassidy's trying to get accomplished. These are things that he's going to be able to convey relatively easily to somebody like a Tate Romney, who come in after not playing for basically 2 years at Arizona State. But his family is a legacy of absolute bad mama jammas at BYU that should be able to show up because he passed somebody like an Isaiah Chisholm coming over from UCLA like he was supposed to be a plug and play all day, day one starter because he had 84 tackles last year as a linebacker in the Big Ten. So for him to get passed up like somebody like a Tate Romney has to have all of us extremely excited. And then you do know that you have Isaiah Chisholm. You have that capability in your back pocket. You have Trip White, who got to play a decent amount this previous season, played in like 12 games the previous year in special teams at Ole Miss. Behind him, you have Jack Puckett. You have Gunnar Wilson, who had an absolutely outlandish weekend. These guys should be able to feast. And the fact that we have so many dudes that can potentially rotate and provide starter-style minutes is exactly why the defense should be able to play equally as aggressive as the offense. Like, I always go back to 2011, 2017. But if you go back to, again, 2011, that was the number one defense in the country in creating turnovers with like 44. This defense should be able to do the same thing, but with more fresh legs. I think that could be the biggest missing component that none of us, including myself, aren't talking about enough or loudly enough. This rotation should be an absolute fireworks display in and of itself. We're not going to have to rely on 4 or 5 dudes up front all 4 quarters. That is a luxury we did not have in 2011. We didn't even have that luxury in 2017 or 2021. Like, even though we've had some really good defenses or we've had some defenses that have done some things statistically to keep us in ball games, to allow our offense to create the fireworks display that we've become so accustomed to, those teams didn't have this deep of a rotation, as we've covered several times. I don't know that this D-line will be better per se, but we are bigger than the 2021 line, and we are deeper than the 2021 line. Now, I don't know that Jim Knowles would have utilized this many guys if he would have had them available, but you have to assume that he would. And this rotation is going to be something that should be able to mirror the offense. That is extremely rare. Up-tempo teams usually struggle on defense because of the amount of snaps, the amount of time that they're on the field. Well, the easiest way to solve that Rubik's Cube is to have guys that can come in right after them that equal basically zero drop-off. It's a lot easier said than done, right? There's a reason that they're starters and backups and third stringers for a reason. But if you believe in the conversation that there isn't a big drop-off when we do have rotational components to enter the ball game, then you do have to feel excited about Cowboys getting games done in the fourth quarter. Like even this Oregon game, not enough people are talking about the fact that it is going to be a morning game. They have to bring in 2 new coordinators. They're replacing 2 of the best in the business. And it's probably going to be fairly warm in Stillwater, America. Not that, the weather is the end-all be-all to how successful you're going to be, but Oregon is likely going to have to utilize their rotation, maybe more so in Stillwater than a lot of other Big Ten stops, simply because of the weather and the conditions. Sometimes you can catch a team napping at 11 a.m., especially after, a long flight and, walkthroughs that maybe don't go according to plan. And then you factor in the weather and then you start factoring in cramps and things of that nature. Is Oregon equally, probably not equally, is Oregon better in their rotational capabilities? Probably. They absolutely should be. So they're likely going to come into this with a plan to rotate to some degree. What they probably will not be able to understand is how much rotation Oklahoma State does. Like, it's somewhat easy to put film together and get a game plan established for a starting 11 and, a couple other nickel dime kind of defensive backs. It's easy to come up with a game plan for that. But when you're having a game plan and the numbers across from you continuously change, that usually means the strength of the guy across from you is going to change too. For an example, Anai White, insanely athletic. Is he going to be able to do the exact same things as somebody like a Julio Johnson on the outside? Probably not. If they were to, shift a little bit more inside, get a little bit head up, perhaps that tips the scales. But I think that Skylar Cassidy is going to have the capability to have rotations predicated upon what the offense is trying to do. So if the offense has a particular package, I think he's got enough guys rotationally to have a package for that. So we're going to be able to catch teams napping to some degree because the tempo component will not allow them to rotate as much. And if they try to rotate on us, so be it. They try to go tempo on us, so be it. I think we've got more than enough dudes to make life problematic on a lot of teams. So when Drake Toll and his crew put together this ranking and they say that Oklahoma State can end the season number 4 in the conference, I don't see why not. I don't see what would be preventing Oklahoma State from accomplishing that. Like, of course, there's a ton of questions, but a lot of the questions should be revolving around the defense. But if you go back and look at what Skylar Cassidy has been able to do, and now you take that information, every stop he's been at, he's produced a top 25 defense in at least the turnover classification without having access to the Anai Whites and the Isaiah Chisholms and the Trip Whites and the Jerry Lawsons. He didn't have access to those guys. So he should feel like a kid in a candy store if he's got the guys in the room to make crazy rotational stuff happen that is going to do nothing but confuse the offense. And when you're already in a tempo team that is putting up a bunch of points and the other team has to play catch up and you're constantly rotating and they're constantly having to change what the protection is or what the play is based on the strengths of particular individuals, that should fall in Oklahoma State's hands. So I don't think Drake is crazy on this one. Let me know down in the comments section about some of the other predictions that he had. And if you think he might be crazy, but it's time to get on board with our man, Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12, because he's a believer in the Cowboys this upcoming season. It's time to make a believer out of you as well. 5 Hour Energy is going to help you stay powered through this entire college football season. So make sure that you're ready, you're stocked up, and you have this injection of energy into your body. If you've got a sweet tooth, like I definitely do, you know it's going to be tough to find the perfect treat without all of the extra sugar. This is where the cotton candy 5 Hour Energy shot comes into play. They bring that nostalgic flavor back in a whole new way. This is the classic cotton candy taste that you remember from your childhood, but in a tasty caffeine boost with zero sugar. It's quick, easy, and it's satisfactory beyond belief. The sweet craving will go away with this intense rush of energy. I think all of us can go back to our youth and think of movie theaters or state fairs or Ferris wheels and picture cotton candy. And that taste is something that typically always brings you back to some of the best times in your life. So when you have that sweet craving, but you also know you got to power through some Big 12 football this season, bring on the sweetness with Cotton Candy's 5 Hour Energy shot. Of course, they're going to be available online now at 5hourenergy.com or at Amazon. This is going to become your go-to every single game day and probably the game days in between. Get what you need with 5 Hour Energy, 5hourenergy.com, or head on over to Amazon to get stocked up on your 5 Hour for this upcoming foosball season. All right, now we get to have a little bit of fun here. I say some crazy stuff sometimes. I chug a little bit too much of the orange hopium a lot of times. I try to disseminate as much orange hopium for all of us to chug. But obviously, I'll put my foot in my mouth occasionally. So let's go over some of the things that I think could be, bold takes or crazy takes, contingent upon what side of the aisle it falls on at the end of the year coming into the season. All right, we'll start with one that's not really a bold take. I think the Cowboys do win at least 8 games. That's not necessarily super bold with the amount of talent that we have. There's a lot of other people that are hovering in that 7-5, 8-4 category. So it's not necessarily bold per se. But after a 1-win season, that's a fair place to start. All right. I do think that Mestemaker will kind of take over what he did in the American athletic conference. I don't think he'll throw for 4,500 yards this go around, but I do think that he's capable of leading the Big 12 in passing yards this upcoming season. I think he's very capable of leading the Big 12 in passing touchdowns as well. So I do expect Drew Mestemaker to be number one in those two categories by the end of the season in Big 12 play. I also think that the combination of Justin Bowick and Wyatt Young and Miles Coleman and Chris Barnes and Terrence Lewis, I think that combo of guys should look something like the 2011 wide receiver core. And the 2011 wide receiver core hauled in 4,487 yards. I do think that this wide receiver core will eclipse that 2011 yard marker, which means obviously he is going to replicate a lot of those numbers that he did get at North Texas. Again, is Mestemaker going to throw for 4,500? Maybe not. But I do think this wide receiver core is good enough and will be an offense that favors them, showcases them, displays them more often than not. So I do think that this team will eclipse the wide receiver yards of the 2011 squad. I also think that this defense will end the season top 5 in the country in turnovers. 2011, we had 44 takeaways, which was number 1 in the country. I think we probably don't get quite to 44, but I think we will easily get around that 40 mark, which should be not only the best in the Big 12, it should be good enough for top 5 in the country if you're hovering around that 40 mark. And again, one of the components is the offense. The offense is going to be going so fast and likely scoring so often that it's going to force the offense to do some things that they probably didn't have in the game plan coming into it. Like if you get up on a team like Oklahoma State that can score in a matter of seconds, no lead is safe. Likewise, if you have to come back against that kind of offense with the rotational capabilities we have on defense, I think that will put Oklahoma State in a position with the rotation to be top 5 in the country in turnovers when it's all said and done. Another fairly bold take is I think we will beat 4 ranked teams this season. And I know that's hard to get to because there's not enough ranked teams on the schedule as it sits right now. But I think we have a lot of non-conference games that should catapult the Big 12 into a little bit of a different category. Of course, you have Oklahoma State taking on Oregon. You have BYU taking on Notre Dame. You have Baylor taking on Auburn. You have TCU taking on North Carolina. Like, there's a lot of games that should lift the profile of the Big 12. And if we do take care of those non-conference ball games more often than not, and then they have success in the conference, I could find it easily conceivable that by the time we play K-State, they will be ranked. I think it's very possible that by the time we play in Arizona State, they also could be ranked. Houston's going to be ranked. Texas Tech will be ranked. We do avoid BYU. So that's an opportunity to be a ranked team that's not quite on the schedule. But you also have to take into consideration, although it may be very unlikely, if we do somehow magically find a way to get to Arlington, that would be another opportunity to eclipse that 4-ranked team moment. I think that we'll crack the top 25 by week 6. There's a possibility to do it by week 5, but obviously that would entail an upset of Houston. I don't know that we necessarily get the upset of Houston, but I think we're ultra competitive against Oregon, which does give us consolation prize bonus points. I do think we have a capability of beating Houston, especially given the fact that it's at Houston, which is essentially a home game for Oklahoma State. But if you beat Houston, then you're a top 25 team before week 6. But I do think that the body of work, if you play Oregon tight, you play Houston tight, you win the rest of them, you should be a ranked team by week 6. Here's a fairly bold one. I think Oklahoma State will walk away with one of the big awards by the end of the season. Maybe it's not the Heisman, right, for Drew Mestemaker, but I do think the Davey O'Brien Award should be in play for him. The Doak Walker Award should be in play for Caleb Hawkins. The Blitnikoff Award, it should be in play for, I would say, both Wyatt Young and Justin Bowick. You might be able to throw Chris Barnes in that conversation when it's all said and done. You have the Butkus Award on the opposite side of the ball. Could be an Ethan Wisłowski. Could be a Julio Johnson, Deshaun Brown, Malik Charles. It could be one of those dudes, but I do firmly believe that Oklahoma State's just going to be too talented offensively to not statistically put a guy up there at the very, very top of each position. to potentially walk away with one of these big time awards when it's all said and done. It could even be the Paul Hornung Award, right? But at the end of the day, I do think that a Cowboy will win a major award kind of in that All-American kind of status. I think that we will have more draft picks this upcoming year than we did in 2011 and 2012 combined. 2011, we only had one player drafted. 2012, we had 3 players drafted. Now, we also had a couple first rounders in 2012. I don't necessarily think that'll be the case, but with as many of these, grad transfer kind of guys that have enough film to put themselves in a position to at least be in the draft conversation, if those dudes can show up and show out this season, I think it's easily possible that we have more than 4 individuals drafted in this upcoming NFL draft. I mean, let me know down in the comment section. Is that one a little bit bold? Because we don't know if Drew Mestemaker is going to come out or not. But if he does put up 4,000 yards and he leads the Big 12, he's probably coming out in the draft, and he's probably a top 10 pick. But even without that, I think you've got more than enough individuals that, like an Ethan Wisowski, that has carried some cachet, not only in North Texas, but previous stops, to put themselves in this conversation. Isaiah Chisholm is another one of those individuals that should be in this draft conversation when it's all said and done. Mo Horn might be able to put himself there. LaDainian Fields is somebody that I think is ascending in that direction, not obviously for this upcoming draft, but I just think that there's more than enough talent. Malik Charles could have a major season. James Williams, Amon Oates. I think that there's 4 guys on this roster that are good enough to be drafted this upcoming season. I think this is a pretty fun one. How about some names that we'll be talking about at the end of the year to go into next season, right? So not redshirt seniors or fifth-year guys, individuals that should get some run this year, that should get significantly more playing time than they have in the past, and should be a piece of our conversational, topics coming into this upcoming season. We got to start with Gunnar Wilson. 6'3", 222-pound linebacker that previously played mostly tight end his entire career. When you have a 14, 15, 16-ish, I don't know, tackle weekend, and you're living in the backfield with multiple TFLs, you're getting your hands on the quarterback for what would have been multiple sacks. If you're able to do that as a fringe second, third stringer, you should be able to wreak havoc on special teams. Gunnar Wilson should be the Parker Robertson of this upcoming special teams unit, in my personal opinion. Terrence Lewis, right? This was a wide receiver that we talked about, also had a massive weekend during that scrimmage. He had moments at North Texas. Eric Morris has even talked about that. This should be an opportunity for him to kind of catapult himself into that territory of, okay, well, you have Miles Coleman graduating. Probably, you have Chris Barnes that could potentially move on. You've got some other wide receivers that need to be replaced. I do think that Terrence Lewis will be the name that we talk about at the end of the year as excitement coming into the next season. I think another one of those guys is going to be Luke Webb. Luke Webb is probably one of these individuals that doesn't get discussed enough because we do have the Anai Whites and the Jerry Lawsons and the Sadiq Clements of the world. But I think Luke Webb is somebody that bleeds orange, right? He's a tried and true kind of individual. He's your Brendan Evers, Brock Martin kind of guy. And you can't teach that level of give a crap and heart and physicality, relentlessness. So I think that Luke Webb will be a piece on the D-line this year that we talk about as being a major piece coming into this next season. Carson Kolb, right? That one's not really a bold or crazy take. He's another one that this previous scrimmage kind of put him into a new category. He's only a sophomore. He's only a sophomore that's been playing tight end for a year and a half. So kind of like the linebacker position was still new to Gunnar Wilson coming to Oklahoma State, the tight end position is still very new to Carson Kolb. So if he is in fact going to be the top guy this year next to somebody like an Oscar Hammond, then he should easily be a conversational piece coming into the next year as not only, a valuable tight end, but maybe this time next year we're having conversations about a tight end going over 500-600 yards. Excuse me, all. Sean Torgerson. That's another name that's not really bold because he's been talked about a decent amount recently. But he's somebody that we absolutely need to keep an eye on. How about Caleb Hackelman? right? We know we're going to lose a decent chunk of offensive line just to seniority this upcoming season. So we need some of these younger guys to kind of fulfill those voids. Somebody like a Jacoby Sanders, right? He's an easy conversational piece, but he played quite a bit. And he's going to factor in a decent amount this year. I think Caleb Hackelman is a young offensive lineman that is learning a lot. He's getting bigger, and he's going to find his way to creep up on the depth chart. Lastly, how about Lockie Posavon? Another dude that's only a sophomore, 6'5", 230-pound punter that can roll right. He can roll left. He can probably throw a little bit too. I was insanely excited about what Hudson could potentially provide for us. Lockie could be that hidden gem special team player that we thought we were going to get out of Hudson if we would have utilized him. Speaking of utilization, you need to get squared away today with your daily dinger over at FanDuel. Baseball fans, this is a fun time for all of us because they're giving us a free opportunity to call our shot with a daily dinger. It's easy to play. Make your free pick on who you're going to think is going to hit a long ball in their game today. If you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the Major League season. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team or you're keeping an eye on matchups across the league. Every game has somebody capable of leaving the yard. Now you get your chance to cash in and make a prediction before the first pitch. I continuously ride this potentially NL Rookie of the Year Garrett Benj train. Carson Benj, sorry. Shout out to his brother, Garrett. But, you know, I love going with Christian Encarnacion Strand. Jackson Holiday's not a bad pick. Let me know down in the comment section. I'm going to roll with Garrett Benj, right? I do think that he should win the Rookie of the Year, even though that's, you know, the orange in me showing out. He's backing it up, and he's answering major moments in big-time ball games. So let me know down in the comment section who's going to be your next daily dinger candidate for me. I'm going to keep rocking with Carson Benj on this one. So if you're ready to play your game today, join FanDuel.com. That is FanDuel.com. Go there to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's going to drop a major league bomb. Play ball and swing for the fences with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Man, we're going to have to breeze through this one. Cowgirl softball. They were ranked the number 3 portal class by Baseball America. Now they're ranked the number 9 portal class by D1 baseball or D1 softball. Sorry. The biggest question is, can Kenny Gaske and Oklahoma State take their claim to the kings or queens of the Big 12? Much like in football, the only team that gave us massive problems every year was OU. So when OU was out of the conference, it was natural to assume that Oklahoma State was going to take its rightful place on the throne. With a team like Utah coming over with a couple Pac-12 titles, that was supposed to be the conversation. It has not transpired that way, unfortunately. The same has to be said for softball. Like Texas was a little bit of a problem, but not that big of a problem. The biggest problem was OU. So when OU left the conference in softball, it was supposed to be us. It was supposed to be ours. We were supposed to be the queens of the Big 12, unquestionably. Nobody saw Texas Tech coming in to do what they did. I think it's good for the Big 12 what Texas Tech has done. But Kenny Gaske needs to answer the bell this year. Not that he hasn't already, but I also think that he's not working with the same budget as somebody like a Texas Tech. We also had Arizona and Arizona State in the top 10 with us. So you've got Texas Tech, Arizona, Arizona State, Oklahoma State, all with top 10 softball portal classes. So it'll be a monumental task for Kenny Gaske and the Cowgirls to reclaim the throne as queens of the Big 12. But you got to feel fairly excited about it. When you bring in Mississippi State's Delaney Everett, like, you have to be insanely pumped as an Oklahoma State fan. She went 17-4 with a 2.5 ERA, almost 100 Ks and 51 appearances. She was responsible for beating OU, who was ranked number 2 in the country, to get the Lady Bulldogs on in the Carl's World Series. Her performance essentially knocked the Lady Sooners out of the whole daggone thing. So a massive addition for the Cowgirls. And then you have Proctor. She was a freshman D1 softball, first team All-American last year at Utah. She can get on the bump, but in the 95 games with Utah, she batted almost 330 with 20 home runs, 23 doubles, and almost 70 ribbies. Then how about, you can't forget about Hartley. Maddie Hartley coming over from Houston. She was one of these two-way individuals that could do a multitude of things. Now, she morphed more into a hitter at Houston, hitting 303, 75 home runs, 25 home runs, 75 RBIs. She drove in almost 65 runs. And, she also has the capability to be a utility asset and play a little bit elsewhere, including on the bump. But we had to have pitchers. We had to have catchers. Kenny Gayaski answered the call in a big, big way. Yeah. I mean, this whole ensemble. And then Peyton Kennedy coming over from Ole Miss. She was ranked top 25 high school prospect in all of America. Yeah, she has a 6.0 ERA coming over, but Kenny Gayaski clearly thinks that he can retap that absolutely amazing top 25 All-American in high school who was the offensive player of the year. But you also have Kendra Lewis coming over from Wisconsin. She kind of, exploded onto the scene as a freshman at Wisconsin. She was a first team All-American, first team at Big Ten. She hit 364 with 74 ribbies and over 269 at bats as a Lady Badger. She also had 42 appearances on the bump. Don't worry about the 8-7 record because it was Wisconsin. I wouldn't even worry about the 2.5 ERA because, again, it's up there cold weather Wisconsin. This is a ridiculous ensemble. But the biggest question is, can you compete immediately with Texas Tech? Can you surpass Arizona State? You got Baylor, who had a top 25 portal class according to D1 softball. UCF right below them at number 30, Iowa State number 32, and Utah at 34. So the Big 12, while it may not necessarily be a gauntlet, it is going to be worth the watch for all of us. And none of us can count out Kenny Gayaski because he's done more with less. And now he's got a roster that should be competitive with the top of the Big 12 right away. Anywho, that's all we're going to have for this one. Right, share. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State because you could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor. Hit the like button if you liked it. Dislike if you didn't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. A podcast and people out there. You're everything that makes this work. I greatly, greatly appreciate everything that you do. So go do what you do. Hammer away on them stars. Hammer away on them reviews. Alrighty, y'all. Later, my taters.